wrong hole incident. John Jones. It was November 24th, 2009, the heart of the Thanksgiving holiday week, and John Edward Jones was exactly where he wanted to be, surrounded by family and on the verge of an adventure. At 26, John was a thriving medical student, a new father, and a man with a deep love for the rugged landscapes of his home state of Utah. He and his brother Josh, along with several friends, decided to explore Nutty Putty Cave, a local favorite known for being a safe, family-friendly introduction to the world of caving. It was more of a horizontal funhouse than a dangerous expedition, full of well-known passages with playful names like the Big Slide. John, who had been caving since he was a boy, was feeling confident and nostalgic. He wanted to find a particularly famous squeeze known as the Birth Canal, a tight but manageable passage that was a rite of passage for local cavers. Spotting a narrow opening that seemed to match the description, he felt a familiar thrill. This was what it was all about. A fun physical challenge to cap off a perfect family day. That's the story you'd tell if he hadn't crawled into the wrong hole. The dark, unassuming fissure he chose wasn't the birth canal. It was an unmapped, unnamed, and unforgiving dead end. This passage, later dubbed Ed's Push, was a geological trap. He wriggled his way forward, pushing with his hips and inching along on his stomach, until the tunnel suddenly dropped off. He slid uncontrollably downward into a vertical crevice, barely 10 inches wide and 18 inches high, shaped like a hook. His body came to a sudden violent stop. He was completely inverted, his head pointing down at a 70-degree angle, his arms pinned beneath his chest. He was stuck, hopelessly. He couldn't move forward. The passage narrowed to nothing. He couldn't back out. Gravity and the unyielding rock held him like a vice. For the next 27 hours, a rescue operation of over 100 people mounted a heroic but doomed effort. They could talk to him, but reaching him was a logistical nightmare. The human body is not designed to be upside down. Blood pooled violently in his head, his organs crushed under their own weight, and his heart strained to pump blood against gravity. Rescuers managed to rig an incredibly complex system of ropes and pulleys, and for one brief, glorious moment, they managed to lift him several feet. Hope surged through the cave, but the forces were too great. A metal carabiner on the rigging snapped under the immense strain, sending John crashing back down into the crevice, even deeper and tighter than before. That was the end. With his body shutting down and no viable options left, a doctor was lowered as far as possible to administer a sedative via an IV line in his leg. John Jones passed away, trapped upside down inside the earth. His body could never be retrieved. The cave, once a place of family fun, was sealed with concrete, becoming his permanent tomb. The Dead Man's Hug incident. On October 28, 2004, at a place called Bushman's Hole in South Africa, a man named David Shaw was getting ready to be a hero. 10 years earlier, this colossal underwater cave had swallowed a young diver named Dion Dreyer, whose body was lost at an insane depth of nearly 900 feet. His parents never got a body back. They had no grave to visit. Enter David Shaw. He wasn't some reckless amateur. This was a guy who flew jumbo jets for a living and was one of the world's most respected technical divers. He made the grieving parents a promise. He'd go down there and bring their son home. He spent months planning, using a high-tech rebreather that was basically his life support, and he had a world-class team backing him up. The plan was flawless. The plan was to reach the bottom in 12 minutes, find the body, put it in a specialized body bag, and get out, finally giving the family a sense of closure. On the day of the dive, Shaw slipped beneath the surface of the water. At 12 minutes, he reached the bottom at nearly 900 feet. The first stage of the mission was a success. However, at this depth, the environment itself becomes the primary threat. The immense pressure triggers a condition known as high-pressure nervous syndrome, or nitrogen narcosis. This severely impairs cognitive function and motor skills, much like extreme intoxication. Somehow, Shaw located Dion Dreyer's body. He had expected to find a skeleton, but instead, the cold, oxygen-free water had preserved the body through a process called saponification, turning its fatty tissues into a waxy, soap-like substance. The corpse was eerily intact, but like a wax statue. This is where the mission began to fail. First, working under the disorienting effects of narcosis, Shaw began the recovery. As he tried to maneuver the body into a specialized body bag, the lines he was using became entangled with the dive gear still attached to Dreyer's corpse. After a few tries, the entanglement became severe. Shaw was now physically tied to the 10-year-old body at the bottom of the cave. He began to struggle to free himself. The physical exertion caused a dramatic spike in his breathing rate. This sudden, Heavy breathing overwhelmed his rebreather. The system's chemical scrubber could not remove the carbon dioxide from his breathing loop fast enough to keep up with his output. He began rebreathing his own toxic exhaust. This led to hypercapnia, or carbon dioxide poisoning. The symptoms are escalating shortness of breath, confusion, and eventually loss of consciousness. He was now fighting for his life while his own life support system was poisoning him. His head-mounted camera recorded the final moments. His movements, initially frantic as he fought the lines, became sluggish and uncoordinated as the narcosis and hypercapnia took over. Shortly after, his movements stopped entirely. He had lost consciousness and drowned. The mission was aborted as during his final struggle, the tangled lines connecting Shaw to Dreyer had snagged on a rock outcropping on the cave floor. Days later, the support team initiated a recovery operation to retrieve their expensive dive equipment left on the lines. As they began pulling the main line up from the surface, they felt an unexpected amount of weight. Unbeknownst to them, when the equipment was finally hoisted to the surface, the team made a horrifying discovery. Both bodies, David Shaw and Dion Dreyer, were attached to the line, tangled together. The would-be rescuer had been brought up, still tied to the body he had died trying to save.